Chapter 30. Last stop, the conductor's voice garbled over the intercom. Coney Island, everybody off? Where to now? Benny said as they walked onto the platform. Juan trailed a few paces behind the girls. The beach, I guess, Sierra said. None of them had been to Coney Island in years, and it looked more like an alien planet than their childhood stomping ground. Trash trundled past like tumbleweeds in old Western movies. The streetlights were dim, leaving most of the corners and alleyways shrouded in darkness. All the pizza spots and souvenir stores hid behind graffiti-covered metal grates. Off to their left, massive housing projects cut into the night sky. No one was around. Sierra wasn't used to seeing any part of the city so deserted. This sucks, Benny said. What happened to happy Coney Island? I think that's a daytime thing, T said. After midnight, it's grim Tower of Terror Coney Island, apparently. Apparently. Up ahead, the ancient wonder wheel hung over the sprawl of carnival that hadn't been torn down or converted into fancy shops. Farther off, the shinier Luna Park cast its orange haze into the dark sky. The wind whipped down the open walkway through various sideshows, fun houses, and arcades, all grated over and shut down for the night. On the other side of the wonder wheel was the boardwalk, and beyond that, the beach. They'd have to cross through the darkened carnival area to reach it. Something doesn't feel right, Sierra said. Well, said Benny, we're chasing ghosts into an empty amusement park. How's that for starters? Sierra clenched her teeth. When you say it like that... I know I was trying to be funny, but it backfired. That's for damn sure, T said. All right then, said Sierra. Let's go. No one moved. Okay, I'll start. She stepped forward. See, it's fine. She took a few more steps, felt the chill ocean breeze. Come on, guys. Benny and T walked to where Sierra stood, and then the three of them fell into stride together, heading toward the beach. Juan still trailed morosely behind. Grotesquely painted signs announced that the human cat and the living cyclops lurked nearby. Some kind of hunchback with 3 eyes and a long tongue gawked from a banner stretched over the street. The air stank of fried food and salt water. What do we do if we bump into creepy pale guy in them? Benny said. T shushed her, stopping suddenly. Nobody moved for a few seconds. Maybe just the wind? Benny said very quietly. All the darkened inlets and corridors that stretched into the carnival's back alleys seemed to writhe and simmer. Each scurrying rat and wind-blown soda can racked up Sierra's growing nervousness. We're so close, she whispered. The boardwalk's just up ahead. Then why did it seem so far away? A cloud bank drifted slowly by above them, and for the first time that night, the nearly full moon made a timid appearance. Sierra looked up and felt a wash of relief at the sight of that somber, shining face looking back at her. Do you know how we're going to find Lucero once we get to the beach? Benny asked. The boardwalk stretched dark and empty to either side. Occasional lampposts opened up dreary patches of light. Sierra said. But we're going to figure it out. Look. As they stepped onto the boardwalk, the whole ocean seemed to spread out before them. It looked like it went on forever. Both the sky and the sea were so dark you couldn't tell where one began and the other ended. The moon hung huge and low over the water, sent ripples of light dancing along a pathway toward the shore. That's it. The mirror, Sierra said. I know it. Something was pulling her toward the water. All she wanted to do was beeline for the waves. The beach before them was empty except for a few bums sleeping in little huddled circles. Their bodies were splayed out at odd angles amidst candy wrappers and empty beer bottles. Sierra felt a familiar edginess creep over her. Oh, great, here we go, Benny was saying. Can't go nowhere in New York without some bum trying to get 50 cents off you, I swear. One of the drunken slumberers had risen from the pack and was stumbling toward the boardwalk. He was wider than the others and lumbered with an unsteady gait. Sierra caught her breath as a scratchy, familiar-sounding voice blasted through her mind. Sierra! Everyone squinted into the darkness. Who is that? Benny said. Two other figures were standing now, walking toward them. I don't know, Sierra said, but I don't like it. Let's get... Sierra! Sierra! The raspy whisper kept burning through her thoughts. It was the throng haint, she was sure of it. She didn't know where it was, but it was approaching, fast. She froze, transfixed by its beckoning. Then, Benny screamed as the figures coming toward them broke into a run. Benny and T shot down the boardwalk toward the Wonder Wheel. Juan grabbed Sierra and yanked her toward one of the shuttered-up fried food stands. What's wrong with you, sis? Juan panted as they dashed down a greasy alleyway and stopped to catch their breath. That voice, calling my name, Sierra said. She rubbed her eyes, trying to clear her head. The gravelly voice spoke her name like a native Spanish speaker would, a light roll of the R's leading into the clipped A. It didn't matter. The beast could be Puerto Rican all day long. It was still a horrible, lurking, festering... What voice? Footsteps clomped toward them. Terror exploded through Sierra. She couldn't think straight, couldn't slow her heart, could barely breathe. She closed her eyes. They're coming, Juan whispered. We gotta do something. How many? 2? The bigger one? No, they're both skinny. Sierra, we need to... There's something else. Waves of nausea crashed over her. She fumbled in her pockets, praying her fingers would miraculously close around some chalk that Robbie had snuck her when she wasn't looking. Instead, she found the pen Juan had used to scribble the words of the song. It would have to do. Somewhere beyond it all, the ocean was still beckoning, a distant and urgent cry, but the terrible voice saying Sierra's name drowned out almost everything else. The throng haint was getting closer. She knelt down. What are you doing? Juan demanded. I'm trying... Sierra scratched furiously at the wooden boardwalk with the ballpoint pen, but only a few broken lines came out. To make something I can shadowshape with. In the corner of her eye, Sierra could see Juan pulling on his fingers and shaking his head at her. Sierra, we ain't got time for that right now. Come on. She finally put together some semblance of a figure and raised her left hand in the air, trying to ignore how much it was trembling. Sierra, Juan whispered. She touched the drawing and closed her eyes. Nothing happened. A few seconds passed. The footsteps came closer. I gotta do something, Juan said. Can't just wait here for them to come get us. Before Sierra could stop him, he pulled out his pocket blade and ran onto the boardwalk. No! Sierra slammed her hand on the drawing and felt the jolt of spirit flood through her. The figure bolted from beneath her fingers and skittered out on the boardwalk. The whisper got louder. Sierra! Sierra! The throng haint was coming. On the boardwalk, 2 corpuscles barreled toward Juan. Sierra recognized one as the guy from outside Cal 4. The other she hadn't seen before. Juan crouched, blade ready. Just before they reached him, Sierra's shadow-shaped figure slid across the planks and then up the first corpuscle's pant leg. It etched itself like a sudden scar across its face. The corpuscle reared back, hands splayed, and Juan took the opportunity to shoulder check it. It collapsed backward, but the second corpuscle lurched toward Juan. Juan stopped in his tracks. Mr. Raconteur, he gasped. What are you doing? No, Sierra yelled. Juan, it's not him. It's a corpuscle. Run! Sierra! The throng haint's voice sent spasms through her stomach. She looked up. The corpuscle swung at Juan. A flash of bright color splattered across its face. The corpuscle let out a guttural cry and toppled over, clawing at his eyes. The first corpuscle rose from where Juan had shoved it, just as Robbie stepped out from a pile of old boxes and raised one hand in front of him, palm out. Juan looked stunned. Robbie? What are you... Robbie yelled, and Sierra saw the tattoos surge forward along his arm and flash through the air. The corpuscle stumbled backward, waving his hands in front of his suddenly color-stained face. then fell to its knees, screaming. Robbie's ancestors swirled viciously around the neck of Raconteur's corpuscle. They were a colorful blur against the pale flesh, a raised axe, a swinging machete. The corpuscle scrambled to its feet, took 2 steps, and then dropped. Sierra! Sierra almost collapsed from the sudden ferocity of the voice. The ocean, the perfect, endless ocean, was her only hope. She didn't understand that thought, couldn't even think logically anymore. All she knew to do was get away from that horrible voice and make it to the water. The corpuscles lay still. Robbie turned around and smiled at Juan and Sierra. "Not bad," Juan said. Robbie nodded, and then his eyes met Sierra's. "Sierra, what's wrong?" "Sierra!" The throng haint was upon her, about to pounce. Sierra broke into a run and burst across the boardwalk out onto the milky darkness of the beach.